So not only can we light all those light bulbs up, there are so many other fabulous uses. Oh my God. Let's take a look here. You can make an icebox. You can make an oven. You can make an iron. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. We've got elevators. I covered elevators the last time, right? You can make escalators. You can make dumbwaiters. You can make electric trains, for Pete's sake. Do we cover pumps? I don't think we covered pumps. I don't think we covered pumps last time. I don't think we covered pumps last time. I mean, we've got your water pumps. We've got your sump pumps. We've got your sewage ejector pumps. We've got heart and liver pumps. I mean, I could go on. I mean, for Pete's sake, I just finished a project where I have 75 different types of equipment, probably 700 pieces total. And that doesn't include the information technology gear that we've got to throw in, like all the computers and monitors and their power strips that go along with them. And that doesn't include what the building needs to be a building. The lighting, the water heating, the air conditioning, the heating. It's a lot of stuff. And this is why I'm skeptical about the claim that if I just put my computer on a power strip and turn it off at night, that we're going to be able to save the whales. I'm skeptical. So, I mean, how far can we go in a building? How do we figure out how much power we're going to use in a building? Why is that relevant? Well, because in theory, there's a relationship in this exhibit between my power consumption and ocean emissions. At some point in the life of your project, right, or in the life of your occupancy of it, you made a phone call to your local power utility and said, "Hi, I'm here at this address and I'd like some power. We are happy to provide you some power. How much do you need?" Well, let me figure that out. So this is how we figure that out. You make a list of all the gear in your building, not just the gear that you use, but the gear that the building needs, right? And then you fill out some statistics. Basically, making a spreadsheet. And today we'll use something installed on your desktop, but that's not what they did in 1925. They just drew lines on paper. Made the list, it's the same technique. Made the list, filled out all the electrical stats for each individual item, and then you tally up the power requirement there. You're looking for the amps for the whole thing, right? But you don't want to use the total because you don't use all of your gear all at the same time. An example of the stuff that you control is that you may not run your clothes washer every day, all week long. You might use it, if it's just you might use it once a week, on Saturdays, cleaning days. And while the washer's going, you vacuum the house, right? And maybe you've got something cooking in the oven. So that's the power load that you're gonna put a mark on those items, and you're gonna calculate what your power load is for that situation. But the building has its own power needs, energy needs for it just being a building, right? In my utility, the region where I live, the utility that serves us every month, they send us a power bill, and it includes the last 12 months. It includes a little chart that shows the last 12 months of energy consumption. And that's a little bar chart, shows the peaks and valleys, right? So if you want to dip your toe into how we do this stuff behind the scenes and calculate how to answer the question of how much service you need at your building, it's some version of this. You make a winter scenario because that's one of the peaks. Now, if you're using natural gas to generate the heat, then the peak has to do with the blowers that push the air around your building. Or in my case, I've got radiators. So, there's an electric blower that's pushing the fuel, and there's an electric motor that's pumping the water through the building, right? So that's that peak. And then there's troughs on either side when we don't need heat, when we don't need cooling. But then we come to the whopper. That's peak usage. Air conditioning. Where I live in the mid-Atlantic, we've got the air conditioning running, if I have my way, in the buildings that I live in, sometime as late into June as we can possibly get, but sometimes it comes in earlier. And I try to turn it off in September, but it never works because that heat that gets generated here just runs well into October. So, and that's true for most buildings in this region. So that peak usage portion of the graph, lasts for that window of time. So that daily usage pattern plus that's your peak use. Congratulations, you just walked your way into worst case scenario planning. And that's how we call them back and say, well, I run an average American home, so I need about 200 amps of service. My fancy dancy building out there that I'm working on for my client out there, we need definitely 4 digits of amperage, maybe 5 digits of amperage without thinking about it. So the guy on the other end of the phone has to go, well, thanks for your input. What's he going to do with that information? He does his version of what we just walked through. This is how I think about that. You may have like 50 pieces of gear in your house that take electricity, and you've done your worst case scenario plan and you figure out what your peak is. 50 pieces of gear. My fancy dancy project that I'm working on for this client probably has something on the order of, I'm just wildly guessing, 2,500 to maybe 3,500 pieces of gear. Okay, we're going to have to run that calculation on. The guy on the other end of the phone asking for the amperage, he's got 200,000 customers. Your address is a customer, and he doesn't care about the stuff that's inside. He cares about the number you asked for. He cares about 200 amps in your case, or the 4 digits or 5 digits of amperage that I asked for, right? Because he's got to balance his grid distribution and he's got to balance his production. So he's going to dump your data into the 200,000 customers he serves and try to figure out how to keep this project going. And they've been doing this like crazy for the last 50 years. They've added 12x power production in 75 years, right? It was actually about a 50-year window that they added 12x production. So what's the problem for them? There's a long list of problems for them, and I can, if you want to know more about my take on it, I have a quick summary of that, like a really quick list of that, if you're curious and you want to know. But kind of we don't care. I mean, we do, because we're, people like us do that kind of thing. But we've delegated that problem to not just them, but to the state houses, because the state houses issue the license for these guys to operate as a monopoly. I only have one choice about who produces my energy or who delivers that energy to me. The last 20 years, I've now been able to choose where I get my energy, right? But up until that point, my local utility was the only game in town. And so I play the role in that situation as, because I've delegated this problem, I play the role of customer and I play the role of constituent because I vote for my state house. But that still leaves me with this big fat question. How much fossil fuel do they use to produce that electricity? Because that's the connection to the emissions. How much fossil fuel is my guy using? If you live in, say, Buffalo, probably not very much, because you've got the Niagara plant right there, and that's all hydro. If you live in the Columbia Gorge, if you live near Portland, Oregon, you don't have a whole lot of fossil fuel to worry about. But those of us who live in places that are served by fossil fuel plants, I'd like to know. And I'd also like to know, how long will it be before we phase those guys out? Because if it's imminent, like the next 5 to 10 years, or more usefully, within the lifespan between renovations for buildings, then I'm not going to fuss about this. So I'd like to know. But if it's going to go on for a long time, then I'm going to take fate into my own hands, and I'm going to start using technologies that we've had for about 30 years that during the design cycle, that small window in the life cycle of a building, where we can make a big difference in that peak demand problem. We can really reduce that problem quite significantly. Thank you very much. And I'll commit my career to making sure that that peak in every building that I participate in. Parenthetically, I've been talking about electricity because the power strip cued me off to that. But that power strip connected to a big, huge doohickey somewhere, right? Big turbine somewhere using fossil fuel isn't the only way that we in buildings contribute to emissions. We also contribute using natural gas for various purposes. And the same analysis that we just did for electricity consumption, we can do for natural gas consumption in our buildings. We're going to have a peak usage during the winter, and then it's going to fall to our sort of control rate, our base rate for year-round usage, right? And so when you add that natural gas usage to the electrical usage, you'll see two peaks that are roughly about the same size because we are using energy and we're using the natural gas, and that's contributing to emissions. So let's go take a look at how big this problem is and how likely it is that we're going to let go of the natural gas electrical production here anytime soon. Yeah, you ready? Next one.